Hello and welcome to Consider the Truth. My name is Scott. My goal is to help anyone listening to apply greater truth to their life. Today I have a special guest with me, Jason Conforto. We serve in the same ward together, and Jason has a unique perspective on the LGBT community, and I thought it would be great to have him come on and tell us a little bit about um, how members of the church can interact with the LGBT community better, and um, help us to understand a little bit about, I guess, their struggles, and understand a little bit about the I guess there's a, I don't know how to say it. There's a conflict between social issues and the church, and how we could resolve some of those things. Um, Jason is involved on the stake level here where we live in an LGBTQ support group. And he's also a filmmaker, and he's recently made a film called Dog Valley um, about a man who was brutally murdered for being gay. And it's a tragic and awful story. Also, Jason has a son who's come out as gay recently. His name is Jameson. And so Jason, as a father, has learned from that experience and from his various friends, and just from being a member of the church, being around, being alive. So anything you want to correct me out there, Jason?
No, that's good. That's a great introduction. Yeah, so I've been in this space for a few years now, and just constantly learning and growing, and it's been just a terrific experience all around. So
I'm,
yeah,
I'm
and happy to share my thoughts too. So
I appreciate you, because for me, this is like a little bit outside of my world. It's not something I interact in. And frankly, like, even just bringing it up makes me nervous. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to offend people. And so, like, I want to get past that. I think a lot of people are like, what's taboo? What's okay to bring up? How do we approach some of these things? Um, I wanted to start off the interview about talking about, I guess, the prevalence of the LGBT community within our church, or within our communities. What are some of the statistics? Like, how many kids are coming out as LGBTQ, and give us a little bit of background on that area.
yeah, so I think some of the most important statistics right now is among, and this isn't church specific. This is data that is worldwide, and not necessarily Utah based or
Mhm.
LDS based, but among those of Gen Z, it says that like 15% of Gen Z does not identify as either straight or cisgender, which means 15% of this generation coming up identifies as LGBTQ, which is, now you look at the impact of that on a single ward. If you have a combined population of primary and youth of over 100 kids, which our ward does, that means on average, at least 15 of them would identify or will eventually identify as LGBTQ,
Mhm.
and so when we talk about those who are identify as gay or bi or transgender or lesbian, we can't be like they are over here and we are over there. The truth is they are a part of our community. They are a part of us. They're a part of our ward. They're a part of our families. They're everywhere. And so they're not separate from us. They are a part of us. And so 15% is a large number. A few other statistics. I don't have actual stats on this one, but just from my observation, I'm seeing it seems to be a little over 90% of those who come out as LGBTQ within the church end up leaving the church. And then also we've noticed that a lot of the straight kids within our wards or within the church are also leaving the church because of how those who are LGBTQ plus are treated within the church, right? So we're losing most of that 15%, and then a larger portion of their friends and allies within the church.
Mhm.
And if we keep that trend up, we're not going to have a church in a few generations. It
Right.
will just be done. The other, to me, the most important statistic is when it comes to suicide and suicide prevention. You mentioned how I run with my wife the stake LGBTQ support group in our stake, and we run that in conjunction with a suicide prevention training class as well. And part of that class, we were taught that when somebody is suicidal, there are things that can help them through that. One of the things is being a part of a faith-based community. So
Mhm.
if you're suicidal and you're active in church, that will help you or help to prevent suicide, right?
Yeah.
Except for if you're LGBTQ, right? If you're LGBTQ and suicidal and in a faith-based tradition, your suicide rates actually go up at that point. And
If
so
you're
it
in
does.
the church, your rates go up.
Yeah, if you're LGBTQ and in the church, your suicide rates go up. If you're
Mhm.
straight and you're suicidal and you're active in the church or any church,
Yeah.
the suicide rates go down. And
Right.
so, to me, that's a red flag for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, the main thing that I'm concentrating on before it's trying to activate those who are LGBTQ or bring them back to church or anything like that. It's let's keep them alive. Let's keep them here. Let's keep them in
Mhm.
our families. And so that's a big concern for me.
So what's the best thing you can do to help them feel or to stay alive? You know, what do you do to, prevent suicide?
Yeah, and that's hard, right? So
Yeah.
we've done like I said, we do the training, but part of that training is like if you have a child who's LGBTQ, you're not going to change their orientation, right? You
Mhm.
can't just like if you're straight, try as hard as you want to be gay, your orientation's just not going to change, right?
Right.
Those sexual desires are what they are, and
Mhm.
they don't change. And so to try to force an individual to stay active in the church, and I know there's a lot of thought about when do we allow our children to make the choice on whether or not to go to church. I know you've got young ones in the house or young
Yeah. Two
and
little girls.
so yeah, so they're not at an age where they can be making those decisions. You know, you'd have to get a
Uh-huh.
babysitter at that point. But when they're teenagers and they're getting a little bit older, you don't want to force these kids to attend church if it's going to be damaging to them. And so part of that is just having that conversation with them, and then
Mhm.
having a trust in them and the Lord that maybe stepping away from the church for a time is actually going to be more beneficial to them
Yeah.
than forcing them to attend. And covenants are never made by force anyway, right? We never force people into covenants. And so we can't do that with our kids. We know whose plan that is to force people into covenants.
Mhm.
And so that's what I would do is um, talk to your children, talk to especially if they're LGBTQ, and find out what their plans are for making and keeping covenants, and wherever they choose to be, love and support them and include them in your family, and let them know that those choices don't impact the family relationship that you have.
A lot of times within the church, we see people that stop coming to church or they're, for whatever reason, and we think we need to get them back to church. Like that's the solution. That's what's most important, that they're in the building. And there's other things that are even more important, much more important than being there on Sundays, right?
Yeah, yeah. Are they even a part of our lives, right? Are
Yeah.
like are we, especially as you get older and your kids start to go out. I've got two kids in college. Like I want them to come home for the holidays. I want them to
Mhm.
want to be in my home.
Yeah.
And secondary to that, I want them to be in church. But whether or not they choose to go to church is not going to be a factor on whether or not they are invited to my home and to be able to
Mhm.
be in my house. So
Yeah. Well, so the church is hyper focused on the family structure. You know, there's a mom, there's a dad, you're sealed together in the temple. You have kids, they're sealed to you. And my parents divorced when about 15 years ago. And for me, that was devastating. It's like, well, what happened to the perfect structure? The structure's gone. You know, what do we do now? And, you know, we're supposed to fit in this mold. And so I feel like my situation is just, and it, like not to diminish that situation, but someone who's in the LGBT community and you're told, well, you can't go to the temple, you can't fit the mold here. You know, what what advice do you give to our members of the church, or you know, what do we tell people about this mold that they've always been taught? You know, how do those ideas come together?
yeah, I think it was uh don't yeah. I'm pretty sure it was Elder Ballard in a general conference talk either last year or the year before, who mentioned that either now or pretty soon, over 50% of the adult membership of the church will be single, not
Yeah.
married. And so already we're looking at half or a majority of the families within this church that don't fit that perfect mold, right?
Yeah, right.
Um, and we've got the family proclamation that can be quite painful to members of the LGBTQ community. But
Mhm.
there's a beautiful line in the family proclamation that talks about how individual adaptation may be necessary, and I misquoted that, but the
Mhm.
thought's correct, right? So there might be this ideal that we should be striving for or working for,
Mhm.
but to realize that we're not all going to fit this mold, and we're going to have to adapt to our specific situation and keep on doing the best we can. And that's the advice that I would give to anybody, gay or straight or transgender, is do the best you can, and when things don't quite fit for you, just keep on trying with everything that you can do, right? And that's literally what we have an atonement for, right? Is
Right.
to make up those differences.
Yeah. And and when you're talking about, you brought up how this community, like there's going to be five or six friends, a handful of people who leave the church with these individuals who identify as LGBTQ, and and maybe they're not even friends. Maybe it's somebody that just sympathizes with the situation. They might not even know anybody personally, but they say, you know, I just don't agree with this stance. I don't agree with you know, with the church and what they're saying. And so how do we reconcile people who have strong differences of opinion when it comes to social issues with the quorum of the 12 apostles and the first presidency? How do we sustain them while maintaining those differences, or do we have to change the way we're thinking?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if you look at this plan that our Heavenly Father has for us, there's a lot of things that I think intentionally seem to have contradictions within the plan. I mean,
Mhm.
you start with Adam and Eve and partaking of the fruit and multiplying and replenishing the earth. You look at examples of Nephi having to kill Laban and the struggle that was there. In the end, it's always going to come down to the spirit, that personal revelation is where we need to reside with, right? That's where our choices need to be made, and that's easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
And I, you know, I would like to see more love and inclusion and within our church for the LGBTQ community. Does that mean that I don't sustain our prophets and apostles? No, I absolutely do. I do. Do I think there's change going to happen? Yeah. And I think I need to, as I sustain them, I need to put my faith in them that they will be able to continue to receive revelation for the world and the church today. And that's how I sustain these prophets and apostles. I believe that they are ordained of God and that they will receive revelations that will help bless all the world. And so I'm not going to get in their way, right? I'm gonna stand by them and with them as they receive that revelation instead of trying to be a roadblock to that revelation. And so yeah, there's things that I would like to see. I'll never dictate to the church or to the Lord how it should be done, but as change comes, I'll be excited to sustain it and support it. And until that those changes come, there is no, like, it is the doctrine of Christ to love those who are LGBTQ, right? It is the doctrine of Christ to go to the least among us and serve them. And I think aside from the homeless, I think the least among us is the LGBTQ community. And in many cases they're treated worse than the homeless. But this community, like, if you want to, and I'm grateful that you are interviewing me and asking me about this, but also talk to those who are actually LGBTQ.
Yeah.
Like, spend time with them. When was the last time you had a transgender person in your home and sat down with and had dinner with them?
Mhm.
Right? When was the last time you put your arms around them and gave them a hug and told them that you loved them? Right? When was the last time you had someone who was non-binary in those situations in your home where they know, hey, I can, I know I'm loved. I know I can trust them. I know that if I'm in any situation in my life, I can always call out and reach to this person, and they'll serve and they'll help me, right?
Right. Yeah.
If you don't have those experiences, then it's still a theory, right? It's still just, you're just playing a little bit of thought experiments on how those who are LGBTQ should be treated. You got to actually do it, and it's not that hard, because there are those around you who are LGBTQ, and they need your friendship more than they need our conversation about them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And I really wanted to get, I guess, your perspective. I feel like everybody listening here, whether they're part of that community or they're just a member of the church, or if they're just somebody that stumbled across this YouTube channel, they can do these things that you're talking about. And we I think most people know somebody that fits within that community that we can love and that we can bring into our homes and try to make the world a little bit of a better place for them. One perspective too is, you know, a lot of times we think about how hard life can be for these individuals, and part of that could be for us as well as their community, that they're here so that we can love them and we can show our Christ-like love for them. Um,
yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I feel like if we're more worried about the sins of the LGBT community more than we're worried about how we treat them, we're
mhm,
we're worried about the wrong thing. We're just flat out worried about the wrong thing. We should absolutely care more about how God feels towards our actions towards them and the things we say about them, and
mhm,
the locker room jokes that we tell about them. Right? Those types of things are are what should be our worry and our concern, rather than what other people are doing.
So you talked a little bit about how there's a possibility that there's new revelation. We obviously don't know everything about anything, really. I
Yeah.
mean, we're learning about so much. Is that I think it could be dangerous to put, false hope into the minds of people thinking, well, at some point things will change, this will be more accepted. Um, so how do you, I guess, balance those ideas about?
Yeah, I think first of all, don't I I try not to, and I encourage others not to spend too much time thinking about or dwelling about or writing your own manifestos on how the church should change and where it's at, right? I think we can start with changing church culture
Mhm.
before changing church doctrine, right? And identify things in your life that you do that could make it more difficult for a person who is gay to step into our congregation and be there, right? Think about culturally what we do and what messages we're sending. Let's start with those easy things, right? If I saw somebody who was LGBTQ come into our congregation, I would want to go sit by them. I would want to be next to them. I would want them to know, hey, you've got a friend that will be with you and be around you. My wife and I run two LGBTQ support groups, and they're two very different groups. One is one in our home, and that one originally was designed for LGBTQ individuals with the hope and intention that we could share with them the gospel in a way that would be non-threatening to them and inviting to them. Kind of like a family home evening group where we could get together, maybe do a come follow me, maybe sing some hymns, for those who wanted to stay active in the church but felt like they didn't have a place. We wanted to be that place, right? And we did that for a time, and we found out that the group of kids that were coming into our home didn't want that. They were triggered by that. They were having a hard time being in our home because of the religious stuff that we're doing.
Yeah.
And that's when we discovered what these kids need was love and support, and our support group changed, right? So it became less about the church and a connection or a bridge to the church, and more about a resource to them as they are going through life. A lot of them don't have parents that they can openly talk about this stuff with, and yet they
Mhm.
need an adult in their lives where they can have these conversations. And so we've brought in gay married couples into the group to share with them their experience with life and merging families. We brought in adult transgender women to share their experience so that they can have positive role models to look to and to see what life can be like.
Mhm.
And then have done suicide prevention training with these kids as well. And that's what that group needed, right? And then the group that we run in at the stake level, that one is church based, right? We meet in the Relief Society room. We have a member of the stake presidency who attends every month with us. They alternate among the stake presidency. We have a bishop who has come every time. We have a Relief Society president who has started coming. We have those who are LGBTQ come. We have parents of LGBTQ individuals. We've had a whole, and then a bunch of allies as well, where we can just have a discussion about what we're talking about now, where how can we improve on our culture? How can we show that we are allies? One of the best things we can do is even just showing, having an ally bracelet or mask or pin or whatever, so that people can see and go, oh, Scott Foley, he's someone that I can open up to. He's someone that I know will protect me and help me and be a refuge for me.
Mm-hmm. And kind of talking about the church aspect of things, do bishops receive training about these issues, or what's that like?
I've served in 3 bishoprics. I've never served as a bishop, but my what I've kind of seen and noticed is bishops don't get a lot of training on a lot of things. They're given the handbook. They do monthly training with the stake presidency.
Mm-hmm.
They but one of the beautiful things about a bishop is they are priesthood leaders with priesthood keys, and the doors of and windows of revelation are open to them, and that's what they need to be relying on. And so I think from what I've seen, not a lot of training has happened. My wife and I have been invited to do stake leadership training with the stake about these issues. So I know in our stake some training has happened, but in general, I think the church expects the bishops to jump into it and to receive revelation and act upon that revelation. And I think that's the way. I think that's a good method. But general training is important, and I just don't know what they're receiving.
Mhm. I wanted to ask about your relationship with your son, Jameson, and since he's come out as gay, that was it 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Yeah, it was 2 years ago. It was well, it's coming up on 3 years now, right? I
I know
think
it
it was
better
like,
than you.
yeah, you should, or I should know it better. Yeah, it's been about 2 years now. I think it was right before he turned 18, and he just
Yeah.
turned 20 a few months ago. So a little
Yeah.
over 2 years, he came out. Um, I'll be honest, my relationship with Jameson in his teenage years was difficult. We didn't have a great relationship, and part of that was poor communication on both of our parts, and a big part of that was the fact that he was in the closet pretending to be somebody he wasn't, and hating who he actually was, right? So he had this own conflict with himself, and he saw me as a, the religious leader within our home. I like I said, I've been in 3 bishoprics, so you know a decade of his growing up life, he saw me as a church leader on the stand. And
You fit the
he went,
mold, like we're talking.
yeah,
You were like exactly what we preach.
yeah, and
Yeah.
and so our relationship wasn't great until he came out, until I got to meet uh the real Jameson, that not the person he was pretending to be, but the person he actually was. And I won't go into some of the spiritual experiences that I had, but I did have an experience where I knew how much our Heavenly Father loved my son. I knew it, and he shared that with me, and also knew that he had a plan for my son, and it was a plan of success. And uh, and and as a parent, that changed everything for me.
Yeah.
And our relationship, I'm grateful for experiences that I had within the LGBTQ community. If he would have come out maybe 5, 10, for sure 10 years before he did, I probably wouldn't have reacted as open and loving and supportive as I did when he did come out.
Mhm.
But he when he came out, and when he was embraced by our family and knew that we weren't going to kick him out of our house,
Yeah.
our relationship immediately changed, and changed for the better. And I have just the best relationship with him, and his coming out has blessed my life, my wife's lives, our life, our marriage. It's blessed our entire family, and has been one of the greatest things that has ever happened to our family. And I'm so grateful to be a father of a gay son, and I love him, and and without any remorse or shame or anything like that. I am so proud of my son, and he feels that love, and it's changed our relationship.
That's a beautiful story. Thanks for sharing that. I was talking to my mom before this interview. She called me, and I was telling her how I'd be doing this interview this evening, and my brother's gay, and he had a awful teenage experience, and um, it was hard for him to talk to my parents about what he felt inside, and eventually, all these things come out, and my mom was worried about he's gay. How does this work with the plan? And she didn't receive any answers, but she received a very strong spiritual experience similar to yours, just saying, you don't need to worry about him. And I don't know what that means. And that might not be the answer for everybody in that situation. But for my brother and for your son, I feel like we don't need to worry about them. Whatever that means, I think
Yeah,
they're
yeah, I totally agree. And it's not that we don't worry about it. Of course I worry about my son, and of course your mom worries about your
yeah,
brother, and but there's a difference between that and I think what the Lord is teaching your mother and taught me is you don't need to be their savior.
yeah.
That's not your role. They that role has been filled by somebody much more qualified than
Mhm.
us. You need to be their father. You need to be their mother. You need to be their brother. You need to love them and make sure that they are safe in your family. We talk about or in First Corinthians 12, when we talk about the body of Christ, right?
Mhm.
And Paul teaches, I won't go into the specifics, but different body parts where you can't look at another body part and say they don't belong here,
Yeah.
right? And then it says that you can't look at the body part you are and say you don't belong here. And I think we do both.
Mhm.
I think a lot of times we either think we're frauds and we don't belong, or we see somebody else and we see, oh, they're not like us. They don't belong here. But that
Mhm.
that same chapter also talks about the least parts of our bodies, these ugly parts of our bodies, and how they should be lifted up and celebrated and given the most honor as
Mhm.
well. And we're not doing that right now. We're not giving the most honor to the LGBTQ community, right? We're treating them worse than we treat the rest of the community. And so I think that will change. But yeah, the doctrine's already in place to love and include them.
That's a really good segue into my next question here. I have a couple quotes first that I'd like to read. So, Elder Quentin L. Cook of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles extended the invitation to be at the forefront in terms of expressing love, compassion, and outreach. Let's not have the families exclude or be disrespectful of those who choose different lifestyle as a result of their feelings about their own gender. And then from Gene B. Bingham, the General Relief Society president, said, if you keep your mind open and your heart open, you find out lots of wonderful things about people that you might not have ever expected. When you've experienced, when you've seen, when you've opened your heart to other people, you see that we all belong. So my question for you is how have, as you have done these things, as you have opened your heart up to to people who need it the most, how has your service helped you become a better person?
I think kind of like I mentioned before, it's changed our family. It's changed who we are. Like honestly, I I look at Jameson coming out, and I feel like the Lord has put me on a fast track to becoming a better disciple of Christ, and I feel so honored that he has given our family that opportunity, because it's amazing. It's the more the more you seek after the least among us and you serve them and love them, the closer you're going to feel to Christ. You can't serve people like that and not feel Christ's love for them. Um, and that changes you. His atonement and his love has changed me, and now I look at those who don't have close family relationships with those who are LGBTQ, or maybe have not stepped in the ally space, and I almost feel sorry for them that they don't that they haven't had this experience and this love. And so yeah, I'm a completely different person because of this experience, and it's been nothing but just the most beautiful growing and learning experience that the Lord has ever provided in my life.
Sharing that. So I guess for my final question is people who identify as LGBTQ, what do you recommend for them to connect with support and to find someone that can help them? What would your advice to those people be?
A bunch of things. One, some things that have helped me. First of all, there's some, and this would be advice for not just those who are LGBTQ, but just general advice. There's some great podcasts out there that can connect you with information. Right. There are two in particular that I really enjoy: Listen, Learn, and Love with Richard Osler, and then Questions from the Closet with Ben Shalati and Charlie Bird. They're both LDS based podcasts. One from the perspective of a man who is trying to understand those who are LGBTQ, and doing it through the stories of people who are LGBTQ coming in. And then the Questions from the Closet is two gay men who share their experience trying to make and keep covenants with the Lord and stay a part of the church, and show clearly how difficult that road is, and how members of the church don't often make that road any easier for them. And so those podcasts are great. There are online communities that you can find and become a part of. I would reach out if you are LGBTQ and you don't have a safe place within the church. You do need to find a safe place, right? And it's okay if it's outside of the church to find that safe place. Same if you don't have a safe place within your family, it's okay to find that safe place outside of your family. You need to have people who love you and can connect with you and support you. And if you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and you're not creating safe spaces for these individuals, you need to repent. You need to change. You need to become more like Christ in those matters. And so it's hard. I don't know what a gay young boy in Pennsylvania should do to go find help, or in Mexico City or something like that. I just don't know where the resources are. I know for me and in our community, we had several LGBTQ kids who grew up LDS living on our street. I don't live on a long street, and we had 5 kids who were LGBTQ and LDS, and I knew they needed a community, and so my wife and I created a community in our home for them, and now we've got kids driving across the valley and from downtown to come spend time in our home and with each other. And so if you want to become an ally, then create those spaces. And if you are LGBTQ, look for those spaces and find them. I know there's organizations in every community that can help out with that.
And I could link in the descriptions, I could put some links to those podcasts as well. People
Yeah.
could find those easily. Well, thanks for coming on, Jason. You're a professional interview. How did you think the interview went?
I think you did great. I think you did great. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Very
Okay.
good. And you know, Scott, I think I just want to thank you for doing this. I think recognizing that there can be some changes and making things better and safer, I think is a great step to take, and it's exciting to see you in this space and doing those things. And so I'm excited to hear how your journey goes and how it affects you.
I thought is this much that I could do to help. Hopefully I could do more and keep going. But thanks for coming on, and I'll go ahead and hit the stop button on our interview here. Okay. Hey, thanks, Jason.
Sounds great.
Bye.